Let's say the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Okay, I don't see the text, Kim. Oh, here it comes. Okay. Yeah, we were talking, right, this is a story about sadness. All right. So there's an interesting point in this story that I want to call our attention to. I mean, Kim has already pointed out the idea that somehow there is a point being made here about small distances and large distances, hand's breadth and the circumference of the circle, let's say. Um, and from a sort of a modern point of view, we might look at this and saying this is really kind of um, the one way of talking about uh, the fractal, which is everything is contained in this tiny little space, and you can anywhere from that fractal you can expand, and the entire range of the phenomenon is present. All right, I'm just not gonna answer. Um, so let's see, now I'm off my train of thought. If you look at the question of, oh yeah, Judith.
Say that what's happening right now is currently called pet malfunction.
Text malfunction?
A pet malfunction.
Oh, pet malfunction. Yeah, it is. She
That's
wants me to know that somebody is at the door. If the doorbell rings or somebody knocks, she barks until I go to the door because she thinks that she has to warn me that there's somebody at the door. She doesn't know that I understand what the bell ring, the bell ringing means.
She's wise. She's protecting you.
She is my guard puppy. So, all right. So the question is, where do you find a phenomenon? Where is it? How is it represented? How does it play out? And the reason I'm asking it because the question we're looking at here is how small a distance is significant. If we're talking about our personalities, how big a change do we have to make in our personality for it to count, for the full phenomenon that we want to accomplish, whether it's a change in behavior or change in feeling or whatever? How much do we have to change for that new reality to be fully present? Okay, so the way this hooks up to our study of Mussar is in the following way. Even if we get ourselves a dialogue partner, and even if we find some other way of looking at any of the midot, any of the qualities that that Mussar points to. I mean, let's say we're dealing with the question of how to deal with anger, big one for me. So in order for there to have been significant change in my relationship or my expression or involvement with anger, how much change do I have to have made? How much of a breakdown can remain? And I am still entitled to say that I have improved or changed my relationship to the quality of anger. This is not unrelated to what we were just talking about before. That is to say, if God is present, where does evil fit? If, if there's, if we have a quality or a function that exists, in order for it to exist fully, does it have to exclude its opposite or some contradictory function 100% in order for you to say that function exists? Or is it possible that there is somehow a little bit of um, the antidote, so to speak, to the quality that we are looking to cultivate is still present? Have I dealt with anger if I still get angry once in a while, for example? Or have I, what kind of progress, how present is a more pacific point of view if I still, upon occasion, feel anger? That's one of the things that is important in terms of feeling whether or not we have made progress in dealing with whatever problem it happens to be that we're paying attention to. Does it, in order for us to have made progress, do we have to fully ban whatever the negative side is? And of course, most times we look at that kind of question, it's not possible to do that if we're truly honest. So if that's the case, when can we say that we have dealt with the problem of anger or any of the other midot that we might want to point to? Is it possible to say that we have made progress in our spiritual growth or our development, even though we have not, and maybe it's not even possible to, fully overcome the elements of opposition in ourselves to the midah that we are looking at and are trying to cultivate? Because if that's true, that we can't say that we have made progress because there is still some kind of admixture of the negative side of the midah, that we have two alternatives. One alternative is to say that we never make progress. It's and that gets very disheartening. You work very hard to make progress in a certain area about a certain characteristic, and you think you've made some progress, and then poof, out pops the old enemy, and you say, I guess I haven't done as well with this as I thought. And if that keeps happening, maybe you get tired of dealing with the problem. Maybe you decide there's no point in trying to solve the problem of whatever it is, anger or whatever, in your life. And you might as well not even try, because even after great effort, it still remains unresolved. Well, that's not good. So then you might say, oh, okay, maybe anger, what looks like anger is not anger. It's something else. And so we begin to water down our own experiences. We begin to deny what we think our experience is and try to convince ourselves that things are other than they feel like they are. Which is also not so helpful, because it leads us to be distracted and to go off course and so on. The point of view that Mussar takes is that there is something with that the negative side of whatever the midah happens to be has existence and balance in and of itself. There is something even in what appears to be negative behavior which we can learn from. So it exists for some kind of purpose, some kind of value. And so we look into it and we discover that there are things that we learn, things that we can change, things that we see in ourselves, even from the point of view of what might otherwise be considered a negative response. So all of a sudden, we're living in the world of the rabbis, in which the idea of there being the inclination to good, the inclination to evil, may be in some ways the ultimate paradox. Why do we have an inclination to evil, or evil inclination, as sometimes it's translated? What is the point? Why shouldn't we just have the inclination to good? Wouldn't that be better? The answer is no, it wouldn't be better, because there is a whole infinite range of possible understandings that only come out of the contemplation of what the purpose of having this evil inclination might be. There are things we discover about ourselves or about other people, or about the world, that come only from the consideration of what is the point of having this particular kind of paradox in our lives. Yes, Kim.
I'm just real curious about this. My mom was trained kind of as a Freudian psychiatric social worker. And so she was always looking at, when you did bad behavior, what were you trying to express? But what I'm really curious about is, how would you say, kind of defend this as being an actual Jewish concept? Because, it's been kind of my path to see so much of what we're talking about as things my parents conveyed without calling it Jewish, because it had been in their background. So how would you say that view? It's a really beautiful view and a real healthy view, but how would you say that it's comes from Judaism?
All right, so part of the answer is historical or biographical, and part of it is more philosophical. I'll deal with the historical or the biographical answer first. First of all, it is not accidental. It is not beside the point that Freud was Jewish and had a Jewish education. Freud was a yeshiva buchler insofar as in Central European German Jewry, they had such things. So he was not, he was a person who was knowledgeable about and who was influenced by Jewish sources. This is true of a number of seminal figures that, like Freud, occupy very important places in Western culture. It's true of Derrida, it's true of Levi Strauss, people like that. So you have to start out with the possibility that in their thinking, their general thinking, they are either intentionally or unintentionally influenced by this Jewish background. And that in fact, some of what they present is a translation of what they picked up from their days of being in the yeshiva, so to speak. And I think that is more, it's more, it's less recognized with Freud than it is with Levi Strauss or with Derrida, but I think it's true of him as well. And the key to understanding that is to understand that he feels compelled to write monism, monotheism at a certain critical point in his career. Where did that interest come from? That interest came from the fact that even for himself, the reconciliation of his modern thought and his Jewish impulses was an important thing for him to be involved in. Having said that, what is the point of the so-called talking cure that Freud develops? It's the interrogation of what is otherwise a negative text. It's exactly what we're talking about. You look at the problematic story, and from a consideration of that problematic story, from as modern literary critics would say, an interrogation of that text, out pop realizations or bits of knowledge or discoveries, whatever you want to call them, that would not have emerged otherwise. This is, and the point of this is not only that you discover something of value, but the negative side of the paradox contains them. That they would not, there would be no place for them if there wasn't already a place that's carved out by the negative side of the paradox. So
two kind of points. One is that the psychoanalyst would learn about people, and the other is that the person would grow.
Yes, that's true. The point I'm trying to emphasize alongside that is that that growth is already present in the story that's told by the negative attitude or the negative side of the personality, and that unpacking that is what leads to seeing and being influenced by these positive factors, which would have been undiscovered otherwise. They exist, and they exist in the negative narrative. No, so we describe ourselves as being this way or that way. We're unhappy with it. We want to make a change, and the talking cure, so to speak, helps us to do that. Does everybody know what I mean when I refer to the talking cure?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, psychotherapy.
Yeah, right. So I'm sorry, you wanted to add something, Kim?
Yeah, that it's fascinating in the Torah. I remember one of the rabbis, Fulberg or Rabbi Rose, saying that when they asked their 13-year-olds, how many of you would like to be like someone in the Torah or something, they don't see these as perfect people, to say the least.
And
they're full of, the Torah is full of people who do bad things, full of people with faults.
Yes.
And so
way?
that could have been the beginning, in a sense, for Freud. I think Jesus is very different. Jesus is portrayed as a perfect man.
Well, that's an interesting question, which I think is somewhat debatable. Okay. And the reason I say that is that even with Jesus, although I think there's a tendency to present things in exactly the way you're suggesting, they were unable to, for whatever reason, to get rid of certain stories. And the best example of this is the overturning of the temples, the tables in the courtyard of the temple, with connection with the moneylenders and all that sort of stuff. They could have, just not included that story. But for whatever reason, we can try to speculate about that, but that's all it would be, speculation. But for whatever reason, they don't feel they can just excise that story. So why would you keep it in? If you would like to present Jesus as a perfect being, this is a story you'd like people not to know about.
I don't understand that, actually. That many people argue that he did the right thing, that the money lender shouldn't have been there, or whatever the story is. I don't know.
Yes, but what he demonstrates anger.
But it's righteous
violence.
righteous anger. And somehow or another, righteous anger is different than just plain old anger.
Yeah, but you know, the image of Jesus is that he doesn't do those kinds of things.
Yeah, I guess I see what the point is, that he lost his cool, and
Yes,
that
he lost
he's
his
not,
cool.
he didn't turn the other cheek or whatever.
No, he didn't. And this is nonetheless a part of his behavior, whether it's righteous anger or some other kind of anger. Anger doesn't normally, is not something that's normally included in the profile of Jesus' personality. Judith.
But he was here, according to the stories, as a human being. So he had to have the traits of a human being as well. I mean, he wasn't an angel, he was a person. And so, so he lost his temper. And I
Well,
think,
he was also here as God, not just a human being. This was, you know, something that was argued in the early church councils, and the idea that Jesus was a human being is ultimately rejected by the early church councils. He is God in the who manifests himself as a human being, but he's not just a human being.
But think of the Torah and all the times there's an angry God, you know, righteously full of righteous anger. And one thing I was thinking of was how many Christians I know who still use that example of righteous anger as a justification for some of their political beliefs.
Well, we probably shouldn't go down that rabbit hole. Although I'm certainly personally prepared to do that, and with great delight. But I think what I want to emphasize here is the idea that in anger, there is something of value. That's what's being said. It's something of value which would not have been present except for the expression of anger. And that's kind of the same point that I'm trying to make in regard to the Mussar approach in general. There is something that is present and ready to be uncovered or discovered in our negative behavior that makes it valuable and in fact even indispensable, and therefore something worthy of pursuit. It's not like you have to somehow, as I think some traditions might say, the point of is to overcome anger. So you eliminate it from your personality. There are some traditions that take that approach, or that it should be, whether it's anger or some other negative behavior, it needs to be suppressed. That is not Judaism's point of view, and it's not the point of view. It's not there's no point to having the interrogation of the midot in the process of we just lost Win. Sorry. There's no point in oh, here she is.
Yeah. Sorry, my daughter just walked in the door, so I just had to say hello.
Oh,
I'll have to just a minute.
She didn't turn off your computer, did she? No. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is that we can either decide that the negative qualities that are present in the paradox either are illusory or they're really not negative at all, or that they are balanced by some other set of qualities, and we just have to figure out exactly how that happens. You know, whether there's a factor that changes the paradox or erases the paradox permanently. Or you can say, which is what I think Judaism's position is that the paradox itself has value. And the idea that within anger, there are aspects or qualities that are of value and have their own standing, and which we would find impossible or at least unlikely to discover unless we examined our negative behaviors, whatever
So,
happen to be.
so when Aaron's sons get killed by the burning pan or whatever it is, but Aaron doesn't react,
Yes,
and maybe he understands this, that this is the nature of life, is that sometimes you do the wrong thing, and sometimes that's a lesson or something to learn from.
well, we say it, prosaically, that we have to learn from our mistakes, which is basically the same idea. That why aren't we perfect beings? Why are we permitted or even sometimes encouraged to make mistakes? Oh, this way else at the door again.
Well, that might be your lunch.
It might be. How are we doing on time?
It's over. We're over time.
Oh, all right. Well, then let's stop
Okay.
today. I apologize again for being late, and
we're not meeting next week. Next week is
No.
Christmas Day.
right. So we're going to pass
Okay.
on Christmas Day, and there's something in there, I'm sure, to contemplate, and a deep Torah principle will be discovered. All right. Take care. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.